As we reached the top of the North Rim, it was after midnight. We had traveled for hours to reach this point. We got out of the vehicles, grabbed our things, and went to the truck that had our backpacks. It was dark, but the light from the moon gave us plenty of light. They called out our names and told us that we would be leaving soon. The Havasupai guides came and loaded up the horses and burros with our heavier things like food and cooking equipment. I felt sorry for the horses and burros, but they seemed to follow into a routine that they knew pretty well. We all put on our backpacks and followed the guides to the edge of the north rim of the Havasupai dirt trail. We used the moon's light to help guide our way down the steep trail. There were 16 of us teenagers, 5 adults, and 4 Native American guides who led us down the trail. There wouldn't be a lot of water for us, for it was late to mid-June and the rains hadn't started yet. In Arizona, that summer of 1973, we had to carry what water that we would need until we reached the creek. After about 2 hours, we stopped, took a quick drink, ate something, and started again. As we hiked on, the moonlight allowed us to gaze across what looked like to be a desert. We kept on walking down into the vastness of what we knew was the Grand Canyon. It was about 1.5 miles down when we noticed the land shift to a more flat landscape. As the sun started to rise, we were able to start seeing where we really were, where we had hiked from half the night, and what was ahead of us. I'll never forget the incredible things I saw. Looking at the most beautiful scenery. I saw trees and dried creek beds too, and amazing canyon walls off in the distance. The trails also led us into forests that looked like we had gone into a different world all of a sudden. And a bit further you'd see bamboo around little creeks and streams. We stopped for lunch about noon and came up on a little creek you had to walk across over a big tree that had fallen over it. We still had gone 7 miles of our 11 miles to get us to the place where we would be for that night. There was a creek there about 15 feet wide, not very deep. The water was so pure you could drink from it, and so we refilled our canteens there too. There was a big tree on one side that had a rope that you could swing from and drop right into the water. But before it got dark, we set up our camp, made some dinner, and fell asleep watching the stars in the moonlight. We awoke the next morning before dawn to the sound of horses coming within about 40 feet from us. It was some Native Americans running some wild horses to their reservation up ahead. That was scary and amazing at the same time, though, to be woken up from the sound of horses running not far from you. The last 4 miles led us into the Havasu campground, where we would be for the next 6 days. And along the way, we walked through the reservation area. We stopped at their little store to buy drinks and snacks and talk to the Indians. That was kind of cool. On the side of the reservation that we were on now, no one could drink from the creek. The horses and burros carried our water that we would need for cooking and drinking the rest of this week. Soon we were on the campground, and there in front of us was the beautiful Havasupai Falls with the incredible turquoise pools. For a while we just looked at the beauty of nature that we had come to see and experience that week. We finally set up our camp, which basically meant deciding where we were going to put your sleeping bag and who it was going to be by. And yeah, there were adults there. Over the next several days, we learned what it was like to eat dehydrated food, sleep on the ground for days, and just play all day. We hiked to Mooney Falls and swam often in those amazing pools that were refilled with fresh water from the falls constantly. We fell asleep every night watching the sky, and we knew that we still had to hike back to the top of the canyon, but part of us wanted to stay here forever. As that last morning awoke us, there was a feeling of sadness all over all of us. We rolled up our sleeping bags, packed up our backpacks, and picked up our camp area. We all took one last swim in the pools, then headed down the trail with our backpacks on. We stopped at the reservation again to get some snacks, and along the way on the other side to fill up our canteens. Then we kept on hiking towards the top, stopping about every 2 hours to get a drink and eat something. As afternoon turned into evening, we stopped for our final meal before we went up that last 1.5 miles and before it got dark. It took us longer to get to the top that time. but we knew we would make it. Another girl and I were so tired about halfway through we could hardly take another step. And then this little guy came up and said to us, "Hold on to my backpack and I'll keep us going." So we just hung on to his pack with one hand, not looking ahead, and soon we had reached the top. We all lay against our backpacks for we were so exhausted. And we seemed to reflect about this past week, being in the bottom of the Grand Canyon at the Havasupai Falls. We all got into the 3 vehicles that were there for us and fell asleep as we made our way home back down to the Phoenix Valley. What a journey it had been, something we'll never forget.